I would invite the two members of parliament to give us just 2 minutes each commentary on what they have said, maybe specifically on the one that bothers on parliament or the constitution generally, because they are both lawyers. I heard them calling each other senior. I don't know who is senior, but so who is the senior? Okay. Councillor Atacha, please give us 2 minutes, quick response. Maybe you can do it from there. I'll just give the microphone. Can I have an extra microphone, please, from the back? Okay, I'm told you have to be here for the camera, so kindly. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes. I'm particularly excited that I came because it's a very, very, very thought-provoking lecture, and it's going to enrich my own thinking. But I have a problem with what he said, that when he gives lectures, he doesn't deliver a paper. As a lawyer, I know of the Hamlin lectures, which can take you to 1917. So the people who are not in this room, how are they going to have the benefit of what you said when you are not even there? So please, you need to change your style and document what you think. Because at the end of the day, how Jesus succeeded against the devil, he said, it is written. What is written is eternal. So David, with the greatest of respect to you, do not just talk into the air so that my grandson will come and read what you said. I was also a bit, concerned that what did you eat in the morning and you were drinking water like that? I was surprised. You have been drinking water, this small lecture to the water you drank. What is the meaning of this? Yeah. But that is a joke, yes. Well, this disquisition is extremely excellent. And I do not think I can improve on what he said. Very, very important. The only thing that I have a challenge with all the time is to just ignore the end of the equation, the masses, and the mentality of the masses. In all that he said, it's important. The Constitution is there. The Constitution is intended to improve the people. But what is the mentality of the masses? That discussion is always absent. Let me tell you one of the things that I see also, that the people will have the government they want. Today, as we are making discussions, somebody believes that I will not vote you into power unless you give me money. I'm about to help you, but if you don't pay the gate fee, I won't open you to come and help you. It's there. And we should look at it. At the end of the day, the poverty of the poor is their own poverty. So the man who is not very competent to help, brings you a few coins to get the power, and he doesn't have much input. So we should look at that dimension also. Because at the end of the day, if you don't want to elect good people, you won't have good government. That is my humble view. And good people should not be the ones who are saying that, I have big ideas, but my pocket is not deep. So you shut off all the good people who come and, practice the Constitution and improve the Constitution and improve the life of the people. And then the averages will go. By reason of the coins you give to the masses. And that area is my heartbeat. And in good time, I'm also going to address it. So, David, you've done a powerful job. And I'm very, very enriched. This morning that I came. And I'm looking forward to finding more of the lectures that you've done. I've never heard them or read them. And it's going to help me so much. Thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you so much, Honorable Atacha. Please follow him on Twitter. He has a lot of stuff there. Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Standing on all the protocols that have been established, I want to thank my former partner and a very good friend, DOD, David Ofosu-Dorte, for a very excellent lecture. I left my constituency yesterday night. Having spent 1 week there, I wanted to spend more time. But when I got the invitation, I called you and I said, I'm going to cut short the visit so I can be here this morning, and that's why I'm here. And, it's the thing that Atache said. I have been very much enriched by the lecture this morning. It's a very excellent lecture, but I have wished that you had a paper, just like Honorable Atache has said, that we can always refer to. There's one thing that David and I agree on, which I said here last year at this same forum. I said, the problem is not with the Constitution. The problem is with us and with the operators of the Constitution. That's the exact same words that I use, the operators of the Constitution. David calls them the users of the Constitution. We have a very excellent Constitution that provides, the framework of governance. And it says in Article 1 of the Constitution that we must exercise the powers of government to enhance the welfare and prosperity of our citizens. Somehow or another, since 1993, we have not lived up to that billing. And the managers of the Constitution are the ones who are to blame for everything. But I had two questions to ask, and I want to take this opportunity to ask those two questions. There were two things that you said that struck me as very profound. That is the issue of taxation, and your proposal that we should have, a limit. I don't know whether it's going to be a statutory limit or a limit imposed by interpretative, the exercise of the interpretative jurisdiction of the Supreme Court on how much taxes we can bear as citizens. But you would all agree with me, won't you, that there's a symbiotic relationship between citizenship and taxation. The question of taxation without representation, which, animated all the political agitations and upheavals that resulted in, the Magna Carta and all those wonderful documents that underpin Western constitutional democracy, showed that this symbiotic relationship must exist between the government and the governed. Now, would you agree with me that it is the utilization of the taxes that is the problem, and not the mere fact of the imposition of the taxes? Because if you look at all the taxes that you listed, all right, Parliament had good intentions in imposing them. But how have they been utilized? The GET fund that you mentioned, we have misused it. National Health Insurance Levy that you mentioned, we have misused it, and so on. So the problem, in my view, is with how the taxes are utilized and not with the mere imposition of the taxes. Would you agree? On the issue of the binding or non-binding character of advice proffered to the president, the case that was cited in Professor Atugua's book was a case that I personally argued before the Supreme Court. That is the case of GBA and Attorney General. If you read the report, you would see the angle that I took, which was eventually accepted by the Supreme Court. I had taken the view that as far as appointments are concerned, the Constitution is very explicit that the appointing authority is the president. You will realize that the crux of the issue there was the appointment of justices of the Supreme Court, and whether or not the advice provided by the Judicial Council must be binding on the president. So we took the view, and that is Attorney General took the view that that advice should not be binding, because if it is binding, it then means that the Judicial Council becomes the appointing authority, because whatever it says with respect to a nominated justice then is binding on the president. But David, I want you to probably clarify one thing in relation to the binding character of advice. I take the view that non-binding advice is not necessarily bad advice, and that binding advice is not necessarily good advice. So again, it comes down to how the advisee utilizes the advice that has been given. right? So if a president has been giving good advice with respect to a nominee for the position of, let's say, minister, deputy minister, or chief executive, or, Supreme Court appointee, and so on, and the president decides to ignore that advice and go ahead and appoint that person, is it the fault of the advisor or the fault of the advisee? And does that, boil down to the constitutional character of the advice that was being given, whether it is binding, the legal character of the advice, whether it is binding or non-binding advice? I want you to clarify that. Thank you very much for a wonderful lecture. As Atachia has said, we have been very enriched, and I would have wished that we had, a written document that we could file in the law libraries for future law students to refer to. But thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dominic Ayine, former Deputy Attorney General. David, I think what they are doing is they are setting a trap for you. If you have it in print, they'll give it to the speaker. It's good you don't have it in print. We should also just quickly hear from Dr. Nyaho Tamakulu before we go. Doc, if you could just come here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be able to stand long like the others have done because I'm 80 years old. Firstly, I would like to thank the speaker, the lecturer, and I don't regret at all for coming here. Because he spoke on issues that we are aware of in this country. Our problem is how to handle it. To me, it is the inability of the Ghanaian, be you a leader or an ordinary person in society, to say no on principle. That is our problem. If our ministers can say no on principle, they will resign. And I believe if we had been in a democratic institution, most of the ministers would have resigned because we are trending wrongly. It takes some time to build up a democracy. At the same time, we shouldn't forget the same democracy can be destroyed within a second. All I will say to the lecturer that he's open gates that will help the people of this country. We have to learn the culture of resignation. If we did that or we do that, the problems of this country will be solved. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time, Dr. Nyahota Makulu, and thanks for your advice. And also, I agree with you completely on the issue of people being not bold enough to resign or to say no. I had occasion to serve on the board of a state institution. And everything was going wrong on that. Now one day told the chairperson I wasn't coming to the board meeting again. In fact, they sent the board allowances to my office and the Christmas hamper, and I sent it back. And that's a state institution. And I said, there's no point sitting on this board if we wouldn't do the right thing. The chairperson came to see me, and I said, no, I won't come back. When you begin to change your mindset, some of us are ready to. I think it's something that we need to encourage, and something that maybe the Center for Civic Education, should be encouraging people to do more. So I agree with you. On the question of non-binding advice, Dr. Aini, who happens to be my former partner, just by the way, some of us really don't care too much about partisan politics. My two partners, when I started the firm, initially was Yabuabian Samwa, and then Dominic Aini came. So one NDC, one MPP. I don't know, they were both in parliament at some point. I don't know how they manage this politics. I just cannot wrap my head around it. I mean, having said that, on the question of binding and unbinding advice, I think I addressed the issue. My point is that the advice should not be binding. But the Council of States, so not the Judicial Council, the Council of States advice, except when the advice is security related, should be made public. That's my recommendation. So that if they recommend or they give advice to the president consecutively twice, and that's what I said, and he doesn't accept it, Parliament should be made to vote on that advice. It's a way of limiting the power of the president. And I pose the question, did anybody advise the president not to go to IMF or to go to IMF? Because I think we should have gone to IMF. I think we went at the wrong time. And the reason is very simple. The debt suspension agreement was there. And I believe we had gone at the right time. We would have signed the debt suspension agreement, the Paris Club of Creditor Nations, and probably the situation would have been less strenuous than we have now. So I would be happy to know if an organ like the Council of State gave advice. Definitely I wouldn't know, and I believe that they did. But in going forward, the few recommendations I have about the Constitution is that advice should stop being secret. If a person dispenses with good advice, and I agree, advice is not necessarily good or bad, but if a person consistently dispenses with good advice, then we ought to know. Then the people's representative will know that you are not listening to advice, and then it will be a way of judging the president. And that's my recommendation. On the question of tax, also I think I explained, and let me drink water, and I touch on just for avoidance of doubt, I drink water all the time. It's not because I took anything this morning. In fact, I have not eaten. It is my way of keeping my body rehydrated, and especially when I speak. So those who listen to me know that I drink water all the time. Yeah, so that's it. That explains it. But coming back on tax, I think you take it to the point of whether or not the problem is tax utilization. I disagree completely. The problem is not just tax utilization. It's just one of them. Now, in Nigeria, during the tenure of Governor Fashola in Lagos, he was known to have utilized the tax so well that people were calling radio stations asking where they could pay tax. So I agree that he utilized tax very well. But that's not my issue here. There are two problems with taxation. One is that those who pay the tax are the only people who are paying. And give me a couple of minutes to explain this. My law firm has been audited by GRA every single year since 2010. Every year. They pour people there. In fact, the more I speak, the more they come. And they will audit you and audit and audit and audit. And anytime I can say, okay, I know some businesses have never been audited. GRA itself said that 62% of Ghanaian enterprises have never been audited. This GRA statement, just about 4 months ago, that they've only audited 38%. If you've audited 38% and you are always auditing the 38%, a lot of people are not paying tax, and I'll come to that. So you keep auditing. In fact, somebody said in Ghana, if you make the mistake of paying tax, then they come after you. Don't pay in the first place. So the truth is that we are not adequately collecting the tax. And therefore, a few of us are overburdened. Which is why I make a recommendation, and I'll answer your question. Anytime the tax goes above a certain percentage, and I can give you a percentage. Look, even God's tithe is 10%. Corporate tax is 25%. Average tax in terms of income, per individual income ranges anything between 3% or 0 if you are below a certain line to about 15%. Once you cross a certain point, you are going as high as 35%. My view is that anytime an individual's income tax goes above 40%, there should be a legislation preventing the government from doing that. Similarly, corporate tax should not go above 25%. And I'm going to draw your attention to something that I want to draw the public's attention to. There has been the G20 have said that there should be global minimum tax, corporate tax of 15%. I want you to find out whether GRA is coming up with any policy on that. What I want us to avoid is a situation where big global corporates are made to reduce their tax here to 15%, which will then begin to tax more domestic businesses like Amar's company, which are located here. Because so far as I'm concerned, the global 15% tax is a minimum. It doesn't mean you cannot go above. And therefore, all we need is that let's have a limit as to how much you can tax corporate. And because if we don't, we keep adding the levies. And how do we arrive at that? We arrive at that not just by corporate and income tax. No, we add all the levies, excluding VAT. As for VAT, it's just an expenditure tax. The things that you are levying me for, COVID happens and you are levying me 1%. All the things you levy me for, that enable me get my income to more than 40%. Because once you cross 40%, you are denying me of disposable income. That is the concept why, when you take a bank loan, they check whether you already have a debt somewhere. Once you are already paying more than 40%, they won't be able to give you the loan. So that's my recommendation. There's another more serious recommendation. Every government, no exception, has always said you need to increase the tax net. That's everyone. Why haven't we? So two things. One, there should be a legislation that judges the government on whether or not they are actually increasing the tax bracket. And I made several recommendations here. Maybe it was missed. We missed the voter ID. If we turn the voter ID into bank accounts, we bring everybody into the bank accounts. And I will show you how we can do that very easily. We miss e-levy. We should not have used e-levy to tax as a basis for taxing Momo. We should have used Momo as a basis for opening bank accounts for everybody. Why? Because if you move the 5 million who GRA can easily check their bank accounts and audit them. Look, I was on a panel one day. A person applied for a job from GRA, for a job as an auditor. And then he asked, at the end of the interview panel, I asked him, what salary are you expecting? Then he said, oh, just what you are paying here. And I'm like, what do you mean what you are paying? How do you know? He said, I'm a GRA. I check the taxes, the salaries of people, of companies before I apply for a job. Yes. So he knew how much that was. Now, I'm saying this because once you have a bank account, it's easy for GRA to track how much you are earning and come after you. What about if you don't have a bank account? So if we had used the voter ID card or the Momo to put everybody in the bank account, I would have done something very simple. And it's not too late for us to do it. I would have introduced a turnover tax. A turnover tax of 5% of everybody who doesn't have a TIN number. If you don't have a TIN number, we should assume that 5% of every money you earn is actually turnover that I should tax. I won't introduce Momo. I would rather tax you on the turnover on the money that goes through your Momo, and the telcos should deduct it instantly. It's an easier way. It puts everybody into the tax bracket. It forces people to get a TIN number, because for you not to be paying turnover tax, you will take a TIN number. That is the way to broaden the tax net. In a modern economy, if you are failing to broaden the tax net, the issue is not about utilization of tax. It's about how much you are not collecting the taxes and punishing those who are paying. Now, let me go to the next. So I've dealt with the taxation issue. I think that others were comments, that I don't really, I'll touch on the water part. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's hear from you now. I have a microphone floating around. Let's start from here. Just introduce yourself and ask your question or comment.
Hello, my name is Amar Deep Hari, Executive Chairman of IPMC. Two comments from my side. First is a comment, and the second would be a question to David. The comment would be on the advisory role being played by the Council of States, and to use the India example, where we have the Council of States, which is called the upper house or the Rajya Sabha. If we introduce checks and balances as is present in other countries, so any bill which is passed in the parliament or the lower house must go to the upper house, in this case the Council of States, for the final approval. And the upper house or the Council of States can reject the bill 2 times. That's the only thing they can do. They can reject it 2 times. Eventually the bill can get passed, but by that time the media and all citizens would know that this bill has been rejected by 2 times and why it was, so they can make up their mind next time whether we should elect this party or not. That would be... Now, coming to my question, one of the conclusions, and I think the main conclusion, David, your presentation has been that the Constitution is strong, but it's the users or the operators of the constitutions which need to be disciplined. And in this case, we need to bring certain amendments in the Constitution, which I think will reduce the powers of the users. But it's the same people who are into power, and how will they allow such amendments which reduce their powers? Thank you.
Thank you so much. From this block, do I have any hand up? This block. Yes, is there a hand there? Okay.
Yes, please. Sorry, there's a hand here. My name is Justice Abdullahi. Thank you. So, Sina, my question is that you make the argument for Supreme Court justices to have an extended period at the Supreme Court. I think the same argument goes for all other civil and public servants. Because at that age, they also get matured, they get more experienced, and they can indeed offer better services to the people of Ghana. Would you, by that argument, advocate for a complete extension of time for all other public and civil servants, rather than limiting it to members of the Supreme Court? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justice. Do I have any more hands here? I think there's one at the extreme end, at the back. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Samson Amponsa AJ. So I'll build on the question of my lecturer, Justice Abdullahi. On the Supreme Court justices, you were making an advocacy that we consider possibly extending their ages of retirement because we may draw from their years of experience. Looking at the nature of our legal system and the fact that we have appeals which arise as of right, so that the case can travel from the district court right to the Supreme Court, and even on review. And the fact that in recent times, it is clear that there's a lot of burden on our Supreme Court. Will you not rather advocate that we extend the jurisdiction of our Court of Appeal so that possibly we make our Supreme Court a constitutional court? In that way, if we limit the justices to 9 or 15, the burden of work that will be on them will be lower as compared to rather trying to extend their ages, because the old age comes with frailties, and Dr. Nyaho himself demonstrated today that it's not easy being 80 and being a Supreme Court judge. And the fact that we don't even have a culture of resignation. We may have 95-year-olds who will still want to sit on the bench even though they cannot even write a thing. So I want you to clarify on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take the answers from here, then when I come back, we'll take from this group, starting with Bridget. So, yes.
Thank you. I mean, on the question of extending the retirement age of Supreme Court judges, I think there are 2 questions relating to that. The last one, I think my problem has to do with the fact that they belong to the group of people who, 2 things generally, it is believed they get more matured at that age. And even more important for me, remember my lecture was about the economic doom issue. It's about the cost, and I showed the chart on the cost we incur on people who have retired. And that is the problem. So if you, for example, and I'm not looking for the American extension of, no limit to the age. If you had them for 5 more years, 10 more years, and limit the number, because there were 2 recommendations, limit the number, cap the number, and extend the age. I think I still stand by that recommendation. Having said that, whether I will extend it to all public servants, the answer is no. Not all public servants retire on their salary. Not all public servants are Supreme Court judges. and it is of a character that worldwide it tends to have that character. So that would be my recommendation. There was a question from Mr. Amma about how I expect the very people who are, for want of a better way, benefiting from the system to implement. Actually, I'm not expecting that. That is why I commend UPSA and One Ghana movement for lectures like this, because at the end of the day, it is when people talk and say these things more and more that eventually it it gathers some kind of momentum. And when people are ever given the chance to amend the constitution, they look at these things. I highly recommend that we should look at the constitution more as an economic issue than pure legalist. That's one of the problems I think we have. I think there was an earlier question that was asked that I didn't answer. That was from Mr. Taxation on the citizens' mindset. If you look at the formula, I talked about citizens' responses. If I break down the citizens' responses mathematically, the mindset is actually number one. And it's something I tweet about at least twice a week. It's a major issue. But the mindset problem is also caused by politicians, because politicians end up, as it were, paying their way into power. You see, I have been asked several times why I don't go into politics. And I once tweeted a response to that. Somebody said, you keep making good recommendations, but the price good men pay for not going into politics is that they are ruled by bad men. I'm paraphrasing it. And I said, I disagree with Socrates and Plato completely. There are many people who are not, they can't disagree with. Look, I read Plato, I read Socrates, but I'm free to disagree with them when their system is either wrong as at now. Because at times we tend to use present circumstances over past circumstances. Many of the things we call culture, as somebody said, are actually solutions whose problem we have forgotten. Now, let me explain this. In Plato and Socrates' time, they were amphitheaters. Everybody could gather into this place and debate. And therefore, if you are a good person or you have ideas and you don't come and debate, you'll be ruled by people with bad ideas. That's true. But that's not true today. Today, it is easier, and that was my tweet, it is easier for a corrupt person to buy his way into parliament than for a good, honest man to get an assembly seat. And the price good people pay for entering into politics is that they are overwhelmed by bad people. I can guarantee you, and you know this, there are many, many good people in MPP and NDC, moderates who want to do a unity, who want to do, let us get a central agenda, etc. They are overwhelmed by the bad people. That situation has changed. In fact, the best thing a good person can do today is to stay out of politics and keep talking until the masses' mindset change, because the only thing politicians fear are the masses. That's what we should be doing. That's why I commend this type of lecture. I don't believe good people should go into politics. And let me end on this note on that one. Nobody can convince me that MPP and NDC haven't had good men. There are two sitting in front of me, gone into politics. I know them personally. They are good. Have you changed anything? They have been overwhelmed. You have been overwhelmed. Lastly, on the question of paper. Yes, I actually write papers and I published a few. But when it comes to presentations like this, I disagree with the approach where a person comes to just read treaties and people don't relate to it. Yes, I'm converting this into a paper. And I know Prof will be asking me for that paper. So, yes, they will get the paper and copies will be, distributed. Yeah.
Thank you. Please, where's my microphone? Bridget Jogbanuku, please. Thank you.
Can I stand? Yeah. Thank you very much. You want me to mount the stage? Why? Okay, I'm on the stage. Thank you very much, Mr. Okay. I like the camouflage with the mask, you see. Thank you very much. This is my first time hearing you in person, and it's good to know that there are still a few righteous people in the land. I liked your quote about the law. There's no law so good. I mixed it up, but there's no law so good as to keep an evil person from doing evil and all that. You mentioned a lot of places like Switzerland and Singapore and Rwanda. And I think the difference between them and us is our values. What are our values and what do we value in Ghana? We don't seem to have values. The things we value are wealth, so we can flaunt it, and acquisition of knowledge, not to apply, but also to flaunt. the lettuce. So we are in pursuit of these two things, and with our chieftaincy, that is what is respected. So he's rich. Oh, have you seen his house? Have you seen the car he rides in and all that? Oh, he's knowledgeable. You go anywhere and they must... My friend Umaru here in an interview with him once during the election said, "What is your profession?" I don't have a profession. I sell oil, palm oil. But so we value these things. But the true values that will make us like the Rwanda and the Switzerland and the, what was it? Our discipline. There's no discipline. Right up to the top, there's no discipline. There's no responsibility. We're not responsible. It's not us. It's COVID. It's Ukraine. It's the other political party. It's never us. And I hate to bring the gender in here, but it started from Adam. It's the woman you put with me. So and these are some of them. Discipline, responsibility. How committed are we to Ghana? We're not committed to Ghana. We are committed to ourselves. We are committed to how much we can make. And maybe if we stretch it, yes, to our political party. That is it. There's no commitment. Honesty, no. I have been told that you are too honest. Nobody will vote for you. We don't have those values. And you say we are overtaxing, we are making people poorer because we have no love. I mean, it sounds very basic and very subjective, but we have no love and compassion for each other. We don't. And of course, that will bring in the inclusiveness. It's NDC or NPP, and if you're anything else, you are not going to be there. And in fact, in Ghana, it's a lot of male. If you are a woman, we'll see how we can bring you in. So we talk up the gender thing, but we don't actually practice it. So these are the things, our values. And until we stop talking about, the education, and I have a quote here which says, "Education without values, as useful as it seems, as useful as it is, seems rather to make a man a cleverer devil." And that is what we've done with our education, to make ourselves cleverer devils. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Britt. Please give the microphone to him. Yeah. Yes, take it back. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. My name is Patrick Akoli, the former Chief Executive of... Okay. My name is Patrick Akoli, the former Chief Executive of GOIL. Mr. Dorte, you've done very well. But, among the three arms of government, you've labeled the legislature as a complete failure, or more or less. More or less. One of the things that have come up all these years is that the Constitution says the president must appoint at least 50% or more. I'm not a lawyer. Of his ministers from parliament. So if you are in the majority side, at any time, you want to catch the eye of the president because you may want to become a minister or a deputy minister. I personally think this is adding to the failure of parliament. And we've been talking about constitutional review at least since, maybe 2010 or something. There was even a commission on it. Each year it comes up. Each year it comes up. And things are getting a little bit murkier. Because you are now saying we are in what? The Constitution has landed us into what? Economic doom. When? What is the time frame? What are you waiting for? From doom to where? When are we going to do that review? Well, maybe the experts like you will help us.
Thank you so much. Yes. Okay, yes. Please take it to the middle rows.
Hello, my name is Safo. I don't have any big position. I was just a student of Mr. David. So my question is this. You touched on political parties and how theoretically we are supposed to gain value from the ideas they had. But for over a period, what I have realized is that there's no longer patriotism to the country, but rather patriotism to the political parties and how political parties can grow and further. So my question is, how does Mr. David think that you can whip the country back into a position whereby political parties' rules are what we were supposed to get theoretically, that is providing us with ideals on how a country is supposed to go on, rather than this duopoly we have gotten, which there is more of patriotism and loyalty to the political parties rather than to the country in which one belongs. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm told I have to move forward.
Having a feedback when you're at this side, so thank you. Manasseh, please come up. I see your hand is up. Is there anyone else whose hand is up? Okay, just be on standby.
Like the MPs who have spoken, I've been greatly enriched by this lecture. And I find that almost everybody identifies the problem to one thing.
You haven't introduced yourself.
Maybe two. My name is Samson Ladi. I'm a lawyer. Now, Bridget just spoke about values. I've had the opportunity of hosting quite a good number of respected citizens who are quiet, who want to be in their quiet and don't want to be seen and be heard, at least. And they are worried about values. But the next thing is that you tie it to what Mr. Ofosu-Dorte kept saying. If bad people want to do what they want to do, the Constitution will not stop them. So values first. And second, that leads to my question. We can't seem to measure incrementally what development we get from the duopoly. So at least on the national development planning, when the Constitution Review Commission recommended that it be made, its plans be made binding, is there a way to agree, and do you subscribe to that? It was drawing up a 40 or 40 years plus plan so that we can tell that if one government says, I want to do affordable housing, we know that we have done one set of affordable housing in 2020, we'll do the next this year, and we fit it into the plan. Not in a situation where, like we presently have. The best example to give is Seglime. We have how many houses sitting there, and they are rotting away. Recently, the media has been there and shown us the pictures. Almost $200 million US sunk into a place for good purpose. We need about 100 million more, we are told, for on-site and off-site infrastructure. We can't do it. So it's sitting there and it's rotting. Is there a way by which the people can compel the leadership? At least the Constitution in its preamble says the powers of government are to be exercised for the welfare of the people. The world is also coming to recognize, as we already preempted and have in Article 36, that the most secure democracy is one that provides the basic necessities of life as a fundamental duty. Is there a way to ensure this by the people? So if we can't rely on Parliament and the executive continues to disappoint, they won't listen after they have voted. Is there a way out?
Thank you, Samson. Yes, Manasseh.
My name is Manasseh Azura Wine. I work with the Fourth Estate. I would also want to add my voice to congratulate Mr. Ofosu-Dorte for this wonderful lecture. I have two issues, and they are both coming from the honorable MPs. The first one has to do with the statement that we get the leaders we deserve. I don't think it is accurate. I once said that I grew up in Kitekrachi, so if I dated a lady in Kitekrachi, there's no way this lady would ever ask me for pizza, because you can't get pizza in Kitekrachi. So the average person in the village is there. They don't know that to vote, you have to pay money to get it done. So there's a supply and demand side. The suppliers first came, set a standard, and that becomes the practice. I also have cause to believe that some of the countries we want to be like don't have very enlightened citizens. I was once in the US and we're told that war was another way of teaching Americans geography. They are about some of the most ignorant people in the world, but they have very good leaders. The Singapore that we often cite, if anybody reads Lee Kuan Yew's book, this was a broken system. There was no cohesion. This was a country that was falling apart when their colonial masters left. It took a leader to say that, look, we have to go this way, we have to get things right. And today it's a norm. So if we want to blame the citizens, then I think there's no need for leaders in the first place. The second issue has to do with Honorable Ayene's statement that it is about the expenditure and not the collection. I think recently CDD and others commended Parliament on the work done on this current budget. And that alone shows that Parliament over the years has failed us. When one of the taxes you mentioned, the sanitation levy, was introduced, I went on Facebook and said, look, this is a tax that is going to be collected to fund a certain corrupt business. Okay, just last year, we at the Fourth Estate did a right to information request to the Finance Ministry to tell us what the sanitation levy has been used for. And all the disbursements went to that same company that I predicted. And I don't think Parliament doesn't know this. Every parliamentarian belongs to an assembly, and you know that about 60% of the district assembly's common fund goes into sanitation. And there are as many as 6 or 7 contracts in each of your assemblies that goes into sanitation. So if they bring another bill that we are taking this money to go in and fund sanitation, I think Parliament should do better. And I agree with people who say Parliament is one of the worst arms of government. I did a survey on Facebook, and the question was, is Parliament a useful or useless institution? About 80% thought Parliament was useless, and I don't think it has changed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll just take 2 last questions. There's a lady there, and then Duncan, and then that should be it. Yeah, I think you can speak from there. Just try if it will work. Speak from there.
Thank you, Mr. Ofosu-Dorte. I want to make a comment about what Safo said. He was talking about patriotism and a lack of it. And I think that currently, Ghanaians have become, there's a lack of general apathy in the system. And can you even blame the Ghanaians for being apathetic towards the economy and how things are run? Because nobody cares about the average or ordinary Ghanaian. After they get into power, absolutely nobody cares. So it's come to a point where you feel like, why do I even bother getting into matters of the state? Why do I even bother commenting about it? Why do I even bother attending seminars like this? Because at the end of the day, parliamentarians will do what they want to do, the executive will do what they want to do, and the country will keep getting and going on a nosedive. So I think if anything can be done, we should try and see how patriotism can be increased and people can start caring. Because if things keep going this way, at the end of the day, we are doomed. Because once nobody cares, nothing can be done about it.
Okay. Thank you so much. While the microphone travels to Duncan, let me just make a quick announcement. Someone lost their bunch of keys. It's here. It was left at the table at the front office. So there are some car keys I have with me here. Kindly pick it up if it's yours. Also, Kwame Ampofo of Okwa Ampofo Foundation, you're needed outside immediately. Thank you. Duncan.
Thank you, Maru. Thank you, David. And I had decided to keep quiet today, but sometimes you just can't keep quiet. As David did justice to the Constitution and things in there that he thinks we can work at, we can all talk about the problems the country has, but at the base of all our challenges is the hypocrisy. We can decide to throw away our Constitution today, import the American Constitution or the Swiss Constitution, and expect that that would help. It wouldn't help, because we are hypocrites, unfortunately. When one party is in opposition, my office is a very fertile ground for them. They will come to me. Petrol prices are high.
And for those who don't know your office, who are you?
The Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, Ghana. We would speak for the rights of Ghanaians to a fair, petroleum pricing regime, and then the right quality also delivered. Senor Rana, we will bring him back.
It's good you're also sitting by the OMC chairman. It's fine.
You know, when one is in opposition, the duopoly he mentions, they know all the solutions. And so you get courage, you get confidence that once, power changes hands, whether they trick us or they lie to us blatantly, or they know that nothing will change, but they come to tell us differently. So they give you the assurance, when we come, this will be done, we can change this, and fuel pricing could at least be minimized to the minimum. They know where all the taxes, like David did, are coming from. We are collecting taxes for sanitation and pollution. We collect taxes to develop the energy infrastructure. Yet, you wouldn't see where the monies go, because a certain finance minister with overbearing powers from the same constitution will decide what to do with the taxes that Parliament has approved for specifics. We all look on hypocritically and allow them to have their way. Then, when it blows up in our faces, we think that the Constitution is the problem. I think until we find a certain measure of restraint for our presidents or the executive, Ghana would never change with the Israeli Constitution, the Swiss Constitution, the American Constitution, or the unwritten UK Constitution, until we find a way to restrain the overbearing executive, such that the office of the president budget alone, sometimes you wonder what they consume there.
Okay.
And we have to pay for it.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
let me now, please bring the microphone. So we're going to take the answers, and then we can wrap up. Let's give it to him. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's quite a lot. Let me start from the last one. The issue of hypocrisy, I agree with you 100%, and I kind of alluded to that. At times, I wonder whether as a people we have consciously stopped thinking. I made that statement a lot, because it looks like what we are doing, we know is detrimental, but we keep doing it. And the best politician is the one in opposition. They know all the things. When they get there, they are not going to do the right. Apologies to my friends, but that's how we see politicians. So I agree. I think, and when I conclude, I will suggest what I think is perhaps going to happen. It's not a solution you can recommend, but I think it will happen. On patriotism, from the lady before you, yes, I agree. There's no way you can gainsay that. If there's one person who did very well on that, is Kutu Achampong. We only hear the bad things about him, but he's one person who I think did his best to instill patriotism in Ghanaians, the pledge and things like that. Probably we should pick the good things from some of those things. In Ghana, every politician starts and says the previous people did nothing. You just check. When you take off from Nkrumah did nothing. When the Achampo, nobody did anything. And but you can't move to the next stage if the person didn't do anything at all. That's all we keep saying. So yes, you may not like it to Achampo, but what about patriotism? What about Operation Feed Yourself? There's no doubt that during his regime, housing. Look at Dansoman. You can pick the good things and do it. And the housing Dansoman was built by the military. At some point, it was the largest, what do you call it, a real estate in West Africa. And just by the way, a lot of the DFIs we borrow from were actually not here. You remember it's here into your policy. It has this downside, but there are a lot of positive sides we can build on. So we need to instill the patriotism from different angles, and I believe we will. Menace made comments. He didn't give any question to me, except that on a lighter side, Menace reminded me of a friend of mine. He was talking about Kete Krachi's pizza. So there's a friend of mine who grew up around Lolobi and had no idea what pizza or sandwich was, club sandwich was. And he dated an Accra girl who then asked for club sandwich. So I was in the house one Sunday morning. He comes to knock my door. I open the door. He said, "Do you want to eat club sandwich?" I'm like, what's happening that you bring me a club sandwich? Apparently, he didn't know what club sandwich was. So he went to one of the hotels and ordered 10. When the girl had asked for just club sandwich and realized it was embarrassing carrying all this. So he had to distribute them and leave 2 to take to the lady. Anyway, but that's on a lighter side. Menasi, thanks for reminding me about that. But on a more serious note, there's a question about the NDPC plan. What will it require to make the NDCP plan mandatory for all of us to stick to it? The challenge is that the NDPC plan itself is often not completed within one regime, and each party comes and jettisons it and starts afresh. Frankly, Vision 2020 was a very good plan. One of the biggest problems, I don't know if you spoke to politicians in the close circles, was I had Rawlins's picture in front. And I'm sure if his picture had been removed, probably some people would have accepted it. But we replace it with GPRS, and then we keep replacing better agenda. I think one of the things that citizens must begin to demand, one of two things: either we let the politicians forget manifesto, so that whatever plan that is left with the last government, because if you read beyond aid, frankly, there are a lot of things there which are good, and they are the same like Vision 2020. Most of it. And they are the same like Better Ghana, GPRS, the same thing. If we can say the political parties should forget their manifesto and they should tell us how they will implement the plan which is already there. That's one way of judging them. Another way of judging them is to require the political parties to show in their manifesto how close their manifesto is to the existing one. In fact, there is Dr. K.Y. Amuakun is trying to work on that Ghana Compact, which will create a central, manifesto. One of the things I would recommend to Ghana, One Ghana movement, which, and I think you are doing excellent work, it's an idea I've always had, to create what I call the Ghana Common Manifesto, which is similar to what Dr. K.R. Mwaku is doing. You can come together, create a manifesto that you hand over to the two political parties and say this is a manifesto that, and we market the manifesto through the churches, wherever that we can manage manifesto. If we market it this year and everybody knows about it, it forces the political parties in creating their manifesto to benchmark the common one. So that's a recommendation I will make on how we can achieve that. Then there's a question of, the development, that's the same thing I've talked about. Yes, there was this issue about people not being part of the system and talking us from Samson Ladiainini and talking about values, etc. I will answer that question, or it wasn't a question as such. I'll comment on that in my last comment because I think it will address this issue. Because the issue of our values relates to our culture, and it's a very, very big issue. Let me give an example before. If you've been to a chief's house, and Atacha is from a royal house, if you've been to a chief's house in any of the Akan areas, I don't come from an Akan area, but I come from a chief's house, even though I'm fairly averse to chieftaincy. I must make that point. You are talking to the chief, and the chief, let me say it in Twi, and I will explain that I am fear come to me a camera. In other words, in the chief's palace, what rules is might, not the law. And when a society has that culture, it's a very, very, very serious thing to deal with. Now, Bridget, just touching on that, the typical Ghanaian, I mean, I've examined this in a paper which I wrote somewhere else on a different. What does a Ghanaian mean by the word leader? When a Ghanaian talks about leader, he doesn't mean somebody who can transform you from where you are to the next stage. He means somebody who is older, richer, a pastor, even somebody with my size of stomach. You can be seen as a leader just because you have a big stomach, right? So weight has a positive effect, on becoming a leader. When you have a situation where people have that type of mindset, you need to do a lot of cultural education through Center of Civic Education or the masses for people to change their mindset. So they follow politicians because they will give them the money, they will get the largest. The same way we follow, anything that. So we need to deal with that. Parliament, I don't think I said, if I say that, then let me change my way. I don't think I said Parliament is the failure. I said they are the most disappointing. That's what I meant, at least.
Okay, we were interpreting it for you.
Okay. I think
maybe the wish of the people that they decide to put in your mouth.
I think they are the most disappointing institution, actually. Then there was this question about discipline. I think, again, we'll go back to the formula. Hopefully, when I circulate the paper, I talk about contemporary excuses we give to ourselves. Those excuses we give to ourselves to explain away our indiscipline. Look at all the excuses that every finance minister has given. It's always external forces. And as the speaker said, it's never us. It's always some external force. And we always have a way to justify it. That's what I call contemporary excuses to explain away our failure to respond. The citizens' response is something we need. And there was a comment on this issue about Ghanaians. Ghanaians, a lot of people think we are humble. We are not a humble people. We are actually a pompous people. Any group of people who expect to be carried shoulder high just because you are royal, they are not simple, are not humble people. Look, one of the institutions I should have touched on briefly is I touched on it, but let me emphasize that chieftaincy, right? And I keep talking about it. And by the way, I'm from a royal house. I'm qualified to be a chief myself. How do you have a provision in the constitution which, after defining the chief as a person who comes from a specific blood, etc., is paid by my taxes? We pay them. We give them allowances. And queen mothers too. Why do I pay somebody just because he or she is a royal? Like, seriously, in this century? When they give our lands out for galamsey and all those kind of things. Anyway, we need to rethink it. And it's part of our culture that we need to deal with. Having said that, I think I've touched on all, but is there hope for this country? Yes, I think there's a lot of hope, and I'm extremely hopeful. But I'm hopeful for two reasons. One is that don't let and if you're talking to the individuals and business, don't posit your hope for the future on government. The more you ignore government's plans, the more better you will become. Because you can't guarantee that they won't give excuses for their failure. And it doesn't matter whether it's MPP or NDC. And that's why I have a lot of hope. Secondly, I believe there are 4 ways any nation move forward. Unfortunately, many people, academics, etc., write only about 3. The first one is a leader, where the leader takes people, and someone talk about Lee Kuan Yew, etc. And I've said this several times. I had a rare fortune of meeting Lee Kuan Yew in person. And he sat in a room like this and allowed us to ask questions. 2 hours, no holds barred. So I did not just read his book. I sat in a room where Lee Kuan Yew allowed questions. And he talked about everything, including Ghana, his visit to Ghana, etc. If you leave that room, you will never be the same person again. So leadership, I know how strong leadership can make a change. Unfortunately, I don't think we have it, and we are going to have it. The second way is the elite. When a critical mass of elite come together, which is the type 1 Ghana movement, and many are trying to do, struggling, but they should keep on. When the elite gather together, the thinking processes of the elite can pull people. Unfortunately, the mistake the elite make is when they join party politics. Then they split the elite front. And many has happened. And I'm saying the more the elite stay out of politics, I believe the better we will be. The third is a revolt of the masses. That's a third way. That happened in the Arab Spring, etc. It changes society. I don't think we are going to have that. But there's a fourth nobody talks about. It's what I call the convergence of unintended consequences. There are a time in this life of a society where many things happen. Digital revolution, digitization, recession, Ukraine war, a lot of things that nobody expects to converge. That suddenly converges. And when it converges, leadership, unfortunately, becomes irrelevant. Unless our leaders understand that one day the convergence will happen and they will become so irrelevant, they will not recover. And for that reason, I have a lot of hope. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, that's been very insightful. Thank you so much, Mr. David Ofosu-Dorte. We have to wrap up now. Let me just say that this program is put together by One Ghana Movement with support or collaboration from the Law Faculty of the University of Professional Studies, UPSA. And the faculty members are here. Please give us a wave, as well as students. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think it's only fair then at this time to invite your dean, Professor Kofi Abochi, to give us the closing remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you, our keynote speaker. There's an interesting dialogue that took place in the book Animal Farm, in which one of the animals was mourning rather sadly for the death of one of the human beings who had attempted to retake over power. And as they pushed back the human beings, he died in the process. So the animal was lamenting. And one of the revolutionary leaders, seeing the animal lamenting, was shocked and reminded him that he's an animal. He's not a human being, so he doesn't have to lament for a human being. But ended the quotation by something which was instructive, by saying, the only good human being is a dead one. And I'm saying that because of our two distinguished honorable members of parliament, of former ministers who are in front. That it turns out, and I think you mentioned it too, it turns out that the only good politicians are those in opposition, or those who leave power. And so when they are not in power, they're good. They say all the good things. They lament with us, they demonstrate with us, they're angry like us, and they are like us. And then they become politicians when in power. It is the reason why, David, you've said all that you've said. Because just as you said, which I also quite agree with, the Constitution barely has problems. There are problems. But overall, our Constitution is superior to the American Constitution. It is denser than the American Constitution. In fact, the Americans would like to have our Constitution, but their amendment processes are so complicated and difficult. And so they look at they will look at our Constitution and think we are superior. And yet we're here lamenting. And so the reality is we are actually the cause of the problems. There's one thing you didn't mention, but you can't mention everything, so I appreciate that. You don't have the time of the day, so you can only say so much. But the receding role of the state. The Constitution divides the state into political and a state. But we've gotten to a point where there's no state. The role of the state has been taken over by the political. And that was compounded by the Presidential Transition Act, which was supposed to come and cure a problem, but came and worsened it. So that now, from election to election, the entire spectrum of the state will have to change and become politicized. We don't have a space we say this is the state and this is the political. And the Constitution creates and allows the state, because there must be permanency built around change. But what we have now had is that we have had constant state of change. every time a new government comes, a complete wipe-off. Now, because of the Presidential Transitions Act, every new government is also looking out for who is part of us and who is not, so that we bring our own. We have all become part of the problem, and it is a huge sad commentary, I'll have to say, the passage of the Presidential Transition Act, which was designed to cure a problem. You can't say it all, so I'm sorry I have to say this because you can't come back, but I think you agree. So we take it like that. But I'd like to, at this stage, my second role is to thank all of you for coming. I'm especially indebted to Dr. Nyao Nyao Tamaklo, who is sitting here and who has just informed all of us is 80. Unless I didn't hear that. I thought I heard something like that. But indeed, yes, maybe he's 80 or more, but let's say, certainly a senior citizen by all standards, and as indicated, we should pray and hope that we'll get to 80 and hold the microphone. So we are honored for your time spent with us. I would like to thank especially my two distinguished friends, Honorable Atachia, whom I have been honored to be close to for some time, and with whom we share a lot of things in private, and the Honorable Dr. Dominic Ayene, who happened to be a former partner of our speaker, and in respect of whom I was a junior in Chambers when I started my law practice. Since David did not mention the details of their in-house stuff, I will not mention the details of our in-house stuff. I would like to thank our most dignified, honorable, former presidential candidate, Ms. I think Oliver Ajogbeneku, that's it, who happens to be an oil palm seller or oil seller or something like that. She has informed all of us that unemployment is a choice. You decide today, if you don't call yourself a professional, you have our whole former presidential candidate. She's in the space of selling. You can become a seller too. I would like to acknowledge all other distinguished personalities, including our bosses from IPMC and many other personalities. Unfortunately, I can't mention everyone by name, but I've seen a few distinguished people who have come upstage and spoken. The reality is that we all want the good of the realm, and the failure of Ghana is a failure of all. The Constitution was adopted for a good cause. I think many years down the line, we all know we haven't gotten the Constitution we would have wished for. Not the paper Constitution, and that's a mistake. For anybody who has time to read something new, go and read a book written by an American constitutional scholar called Lawrence Tribe, and the title of the book is The Unwritten Constitution. The true Constitution is unwritten. The Constitution we still have, the true one is unwritten. And that unwritten one, the Constitution itself mentions the word, and that word is called the spirit of the Constitution. Every provision in there has a spirit, and the spirit is a reason. Every provision in there has a good reason. But human ingenuity would constantly craft a good reason into bad. And that is the reason I still think that our Constitution is operable with the little problems that we have. In the circumstances, we would hope that be it the NDC, or the MPP, or be it the PPP. You took issue with me last year about this, but I'll say it. But then I'm talking about those with representation. But if any of the ones with P, all of you have P. NDC, I doesn't have P. So some don't have P. It's with P. Well, I won't say it's no confusion. I don't want issues. But be it any of the parties, I think I'm saved. Any of the parties who come into power, just to remember this day when David mounted the podium and in fact spoke the obvious. Because what David has said, we're all nodding because he was just reminding us of the obvious. Everything he's spoken about, few of them contain new theories. They are things we know. But very often they are beclouded, very often they are distorted, very often we are confused. And of course, we'll have people who would have us believe sometimes that white is black. And then, occasionally we wonder. I think you mentioned the issue about we've gotten to a point, we've consciously stopped thinking. Yes, you mentioned that expression. So I'd like to thank all of us. We would continue the dialogue and the debate. And would hope that Ghanaians will get to that point where we can all join hands in true nation building as it should be. This is a precursor to the Constitution Day, which comes off
on Saturday. So God bless our homeland Ghana. And as the One Ghana has indicated, honor the pledge. Because the pledge says, I promise on my honor to be faithful and loyal to Ghana, my motherland. I will leave it here before I miss lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you.